I have a guest today who truly has an incredible understanding of what we talk about every day, and that is the issues on the southern and on the northern border of the United States and how that affects our day-to-day lives, how that affects the American law enforcement officer, really how that affects our economy and our politics and just about everything else in this country. Tom Homan, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So Tom, I'm going to ask you what I ask every retired cop that comes on my show, because you started as a city cop before you went into the federal government. Why'd you become a cop?
It's in my family. I mean, my father was a cop, my grandfather was a cop, and so I kind of grew up in a cop family. Matter of fact, I'm one of seven kids, and we're either cops, firemen, or nurses. So all of us chose to serve our community. So had a great dad, and a great granddad. And I respected the fact that they were police officers, and that was back in the day when people respected cops, right? And so that's what I wanted to become.
You and I both started in law enforcement in the very early 80s, and it was a very different situation for law enforcement back then. It was, frankly, we were losing about 250 police officers nationwide. But when we looked at the border issues, of course, we had illegal immigration, things like that. But it was for local cops, especially, it was a very different situation. We had great relationships with, back then, what was the INS, and we were able to, as local police officers, affect deportation. What made you switch to the federal government and go into that aspect of law enforcement?
Well, I grew up on the northern border of New York, up on the Canadian border. So I used to run into border patrol agents on the job. Ran into a few border patrol agents, and when I found out what they did, and I thought I'd play a bigger role, like rather than just being a police officer in a locality, I could actually have an impact on our national security and the drug flow, the illegal alien flow, the criminal flow. So I said, that sounds like a job that's a bigger picture, big responsibility. So I was all for it. So I joined the Border Patrol in 1984, and probably the best job I ever had being a Border Patrol agent.
So I want to ask you, and I just want you to be straight with people. Who's in control? Who's in operational control of the southern border?
Right now, the criminal cartels in Mexico control the southern border. That's just not my opinion. That's the opinion of every chief patrol agent on the southern border. They'll tell you. I mean, every one of them has told me they have lost operational control of the border. Criminal cartels in Mexico decide what comes across, who comes across, and when they come across, and where they come across. Border Patrol just try to capture what they can. One chief patrol agent actually used the term "broken arrow" when I talked to him a couple months ago. It's time I can't contain maybe 10% of what's coming across here. So the criminal cartels in Mexico clearly have operational control of our southern border, which is scary considering we're the strongest nation on earth, and we've lost control of our southern border.
Tom, I think people in border states really understand this, but I'm not sure all Americans really understand that the criminal cartels, what we would call the Mexican drug cartels, they're involved in a whole lot more than drugs, aren't they?
Well, absolutely. Right now, the criminal cartels are making massive amounts of money, more money than they've ever made, because they're moving massive amount of drugs, which is their principal trade. They're smuggling aliens, and they're also sex trafficking women and children. And they're also, which is most scariest, they're moving SIA, special interest aliens, from countries that sponsor terror. There's a lot of money in that. I mean, smuggling a Chinese national to New York City could be as high as $30,000. Smuggling the Mexican national across the river costs $2,000. So these criminal cartels making more money than they've ever made. They're doing all these different operations now, and that's why you see so much violence in Mexico right now, because the cartels are fighting each other for control of the plazas, their area of control, and that's why the cartels are fighting each other in Mexico. They're making billions of dollars a month, and they all want a piece of the pie.
I mean, when we're talking about billions of dollars, what is the risk that this will turn into an all-out war at the southern border?
Well, down south, it already is war. I was showing some intelligence briefings the other day, and the Mexican cartels now are using military-grade weapons. They're using IEDs like we saw in Afghanistan. And matter of fact, I saw a video where Mexican military was going to attack a cartel stronghold, and they got blown up. I mean, these cartels are they're very sophisticated. They got military grade equipment. A lot of them are ex-military that are trained very well in close quarter combat. So the war is going to creep over the United States. You guarantee there's already violence in the cities. And here's the issue: cartels used to be just responsible south of the border to smuggle the drugs, smuggle the people. Now, like the Sinaloa cartel, Los Zetas, they are now in every major city of this country. So you're going to see gang wars pop up here in the United States for control of those of the areas of control to distribute the narcotics to the neighborhoods. And one thing I want to mention, and there's a lot. Here's what the varies, and you're a cop. And a lot of cops watch the show and know this. When you file your NCIC report, we grabbed all these stats and sent the NCIC to create the yearly criminal analysis. Right? There's no box to check. It says cartel murder, cartel hit, cartel violence. And that's something I think the Trump administration has been talking about. We need to change that. So when we know it's a cartel affiliated murder or a robbery, there needs to be a way to capture that so we can actually track the cartel violence here in the United States. But right now, the existing NCIC report don't capture that data.
So I have to ask why? Why wouldn't we want to capture that data at a time where in American law enforcement, we talk about intelligence-led policing and all of that, and we're supposed to be embracing technology. Why isn't that something we would want to track?
We absolutely do want to track. And I think in my discussions with President Trump, it's something we are going to track. I think back 10, 12 years ago, no one thought the cartel activity was real, high here in the United States. That's all changed. Again, the cartels are making massive amounts of money. They want to, the Sinaloa cartel, they're in 42 countries now. They're like a Fortune 500 company. They run businesses really well. They invest their money really well. They got Mexican military, Mexican law enforcement, Mexican government. A lot of them are corrupt. They're on the tape. And that's why they continue to flourish. They throw a lot of money at the problem. So I think now that we know for a fact they are operating within the United States, we have to track that stats, and we have to take a serious position on them. And I think that's why I'm a Trump guy. I'm not afraid to say I'm a Trump guy. That's why I like Trump's idea of wiping out the criminal cartels. Mexico's not going to do it. They've been dealing with this 30 years. They don't want to do it because many of them are corrupt. They don't have the sophistication to do it. It's going to take the United States Special Operations and Intelligence Divisions to wipe these people off the face of the earth. And why should we do that? Because they've killed more Americans than any terrorist organization, and then we need to treat them like a terrorist organization.
Why has this become so incredibly political?
I've never thought this current administration. I knew they were going to move to the left on immigration enforcement and border security, but I didn't think they'd lose their damn minds. I mean, right now, people ask me all the time, why did they unsecure the border? Because I started, like I said, in 1984 under President Reagan, so I've worked for 6 different presidents on immigration enforcement. Every president I've worked for, including Obama and Clinton, took steps to secure the border because they understood you can't possibly have strong national security if you don't have border security. You need to know what's coming in, who's coming in, right? But President Biden's the first president in the history of the nation and unsecured a border on purpose. We handed them the most secure border of my lifetime, clearly in my 34-year career. And they purposely wrote 90 executive orders abolishing all the policies we created to give us that secure border. And people ask me all the time, why do they do that? Well, there's only two reasons they should want to do it. Only two reasons I can think they want to do it is number one, they perceive a future political benefit by allowing millions of people in the United States. They see, I think, future Democratic voters. But people need to understand they don't even have to vote because Biden, when he wrote 90 executive orders, also overturned Trump's census rule, which means these millions of people that are released in the United States are going to sanctuary cities are going to be counted in the next census. So when they reproportionate seats in the House based on the census, it means more seats in the House for the Democrats. They sold this country out for future political power. And it's become very political because those of us, those who spend our career in law enforcement, believe in a rule of law, believe that bad behavior doesn't change without consequences. But now there's no consequence to enter this country legally.
One of the things that we're starting to talk about now is if we do get operational control back of the southern border, if we stop this incredible, frankly, invasion, are we going to have to get involved in mass deportations to reverse this?
Absolutely. And I testified a couple weeks ago. Matter of fact, I'm testifying on Capitol Hill today, and I'm sure I'll be asked that question. I was asked 3 weeks ago. The statement was made by Democratic congressmen that you made, Mr. Homan, you made a statement several weeks ago that if Trump brought you back, you would run the biggest deportation operation in the country's history. Do you want to explain yourself in that comment you made? My response to him, well, I said it, I meant it, and I'll do it. Bottom line is, on the heels of historic illegal immigration, we're 9 out of 10. That's not my number. That's immigration court data. Immigration court data says nearly 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum at our southern border never get relief from U.S. courts because they simply don't qualify or they don't show up in court. 9 out of 10 will get an order removal issued by a federal judge. We have to execute those orders. So what I tell the Democrats, you say this is inhumane. You say this we're scare tactics. We're going to have a large deportation operation. No, that is what the law requires. You demand they get due process. You demand they got the right to see a judge. You demand they got the right to claim asylum. Okay, I agree. But when the final decision's given, if that decision isn't carried out, then what the hell are we doing? Where's the due process now, right? So you got to accept the decisions of the courts. And so there's going to be thousands upon thousands of final orders issued. We're going to have to execute those orders, remove those people. If we don't, what's the option? Let them stay? Because if we let them stay, you're never going to fix the border. People are going to realize, okay, this is a joke. Enter the United States. You even go to court and lose. No one's looking to deport you. They're going to keep coming. And the problem is, if we don't execute those orders, they'll go in hiding. And they'll go in hiding for 5 or 6 years, work under the table, then waiting for the next amnesty to roll around, waiting for the next docket to roll around. All these family groups right now coming across, I guarantee you, they're your next docket if we don't stop it. So that's why we need to execute those orders. So, you're right. Under Obama administration, Washington posted a hit piece on me. He said, I remember the first sentence of the story was Tom Homan deports people and he's really good at it. Well, they thought that was a hit piece. Well, while you and I are talking, it's framed on my wall, sitting right over there. I wear it as a badge of honor, and I have no problem doing it again.
You know, I want you to explain to people how ICE got so vilified. How did all that happen? And what was the point of those people who said, oh, if we get rid of ICE, everything will be better?
No, it's just ludicrous. I mean, the left, the open border advocates, they won the messaging on that. Most media outlets in this country hates ICE. So if you own the media, you own the messaging, right? So, but if you ask one of these morons that do these protests, okay, so there's no ICE. Who deports people? When someone enters the country illegally and kills a nursing student in Georgia, when he's done this prison sentence, who deports him? What agency? Because you say there's no ICE. ICE does more than just immigration enforcement. What people have done, ICE does narcotics smuggling, gun smuggling, technology smuggling, such as we investigate missile technology that can be smuggled out of the United States given to our adversaries. We investigate that. So ICE does a lot of, we do human rights investigations. Ex-Nazis and people from these countries who committed human rights violations, we seek them out if they came to the United States looking for a sanctuary. So ICE does a lot of important work, but people need to understand, a nation without borders is not a nation at all. So there's a reason that ICE is there, but the left grabbed this up. ICE sweeps neighborhoods and destroys families. No, they don't. Under the Trump administration, 9 out of 10 people we arrest under the Trump administration, 9 out of 10 were convicted criminal. So we always prioritize the criminals first and then ask security threats first. But that message got lost because the open borders advocates had a powerful message that the media bought into. But you talk to any, for instance, when I was ICE director for a year and a half. When I was ICE director a year and a half, we took over 5,000 criminals off the streets of New York. We made New York safer. I'm not talking illegal aliens. I'm talking about illegal aliens with criminal convictions. Took them off the streets of New York. And not only take them out of the neighborhood, we took them out of the country. That taking 5,000 criminals off the street in New York certainly had an impact on the public safety. Now, ICE doesn't even allow us to step foot in Rikers Island, and NYPD can't work with us. And you think it's a coincidence that crime is rising in Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Portland. What's the common denominator? They're all sanctuary cities. They don't work with ICE. So I'm not saying every illegal alien comes here and commits serious crimes, but many do. And that's the people we want to put our hands on. And sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. They don't protect the immigrant community. And it messes some of these sheriffs. I feel bad for them because they're either very stupid or they've been sold a bag of goods when they say, "Well, we support sanctuary policies because we want victims and witnesses of a crime to be comfortable coming to the police for help and not being afraid to work with ICE." That is much crap. ICE doesn't want to talk to the victim. They don't want to talk to the witness. They want to talk to the guy that you locked in a jail cell. That's who we want to talk to. And and you think the victim and witness of that crime want that guy released back into the community? Certainly they don't. No. So if you go to the immigrant community, you have a town hall meeting, you ask them one simple question: if you had a choice, where would you rather have ICE operate, in the jail or in your neighborhood? What do you think they're going to say? So and some sheriffs fall for that, and it's ridiculous because in sanctuary cities, sanctuary policies are sanctuaries for criminals because it prevents ICE putting their hands on a bad guy. And one other thing I'll mention: if we can't get him in the jail, like when I was there, we had sanctuary cities, then we had to go to the neighborhood and find him. And guess what? When you go to find him, you're going to find others who aren't on the radar. So sanctuary cities put the immigrant community at greater risk of ICE arrest, put them at greater risk of violent crime because the criminals will be released back in the community. It puts the officers at extreme risk because rather than putting handcuffs on a guy in the county jail and transport him to ICE, now we got to go on his turf where we don't know what he has for weapons. So sanctuary cities policies just don't work. And if you look at sanctuary city policies, I just told you 91% of everybody we arrested in ICE had a criminal conviction. Who were the 9%? I'll tell you the 9% were. There were collateral arrests in sanctuary cities. Because we went to arrest a bad guy, he was with 2 or 3 others, co-workers that are in the country illegally. We're not turning a blind eye to that. They're coming with us. So most of the 9% non-criminals were collateral arrests in sanctuary cities. So tell me how that helps the immigrant community to have a sanctuary city policy.
Well, and the other migrants not only coming over the border, but then entering into communities in these sanctuary cities, they're also at risk for being crime victims of these other migrants. Am I correct?
You're exactly right. MS-13, they prey on the migrant communities because the migrant communities may be afraid to go to police, and that's the kind of damage the left has done. The open borders, they've made the migrant community scared of police. They shouldn't be, but they've convinced them that ICE is a bad guy. So the MS-13 can victimize a family over and over again. They're afraid to go to the police because they're in country illegally. If they knew the truth is if you're actually a victim of a crime and you're in the country illegally, you can actually get a visa and be here legally. But the left again is taking over the conversation, and we let them. And if there's only a couple of networks out there, maybe Fox and Newsmax, that speak the truth about immigration enforcement, all the other networks and all the TV, all this newspapers, and they're open borders people, and I just don't understand it.
We also talk a lot about, we talk about the drugs, we talk about the criminals. We also, and people are starting to understand that we're also talking about terrorism. You and I, we were cops during 9/11/01. Are we heading for 9/10/01 again, where we're going to get completely surprised potentially by a terror attack because we are so open?
Well, I'm convinced something's coming. No one's going to convince me otherwise. And here's why I say that. Right now, under the Biden administration, we got 1.9 million known gotaways. Known gotaways. Because they're captured on video, drone, or sensor traffic, and they've been recorded. So there's images coming across the border, but never apprehended. 1.9 million. Border Patrol's arrested people from 181 different countries. Many of these countries sponsor terror. Border Patrol's apprehended 340 people on terrorist watch lists crossing the southern border since Biden been president. Twice many on the northern border, we should never talk about. I can't tell you how many terrorists have crossed the border and got away under the Biden administration, but I can tell you this: we're going to find out someday soon, and it's going to be a bad day for America.
Yeah, it's a very, very frightening prospect. Tom, you are involved with an organization called Border 911, a group of just incredible professionals. Talk about that for just a minute and tell folks where they can find out more about Border 911.
Well, a couple months ago, I wake up every day pissed off because we had a secure border, the unsecured. Every day I wake up pissed off what they've done and all the death and fentanyl and terrorism, all the stuff it's causing. So I decided to start a 501c3 nonprofit called Border 911. And I grabbed, in my opinion, probably the best border experts in the world. And why? Because all of them but one wore the uniform. They know what it's like to arrest people. They know what it's like to prosecute cartels. They know what it's like to put people in prison. And most of us also know what it's like to have a successful border security policy because we worked for the Trump administration who had the most secure border. And then I brought Sarah Carter in, who spent 20 years as an investigative journalist for Fox. So I brought this group together to create a nonprofit. And our goal is to go around the country the next 8 months here and have huge events and try to explain to people why border security matters. It's just not about illegal immigration anymore. But when you cause a crisis this big, that's when the fentanyl comes across, killed 114,000 people. That's when the terrorists come in. That's when the sex trafficking of women and children up 600%. That's why we had 1,700 migrants have died crossing this border. So we want to explain to people border security matters. You can't have national security or border security. So we want to do this for the next 10 months, because we started a couple months ago, and get to mostly independence. I don't need to convince Trump people. I need to convince independents why border security is so important and tell them the truth what's happening. So when they get to that voting booth in November, they vote for border security.
I'll tell you what, Tom, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. And if you would like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.